Hello, English learners. I am Emma, your host for today. If you are new here, I would like to tell you that we upload a new English learning video every day on this channel to help you improve your English faster and more naturally. In today's episode, you will not only improve your English listening skills, but also your English speaking and writing skills at the same time. In today's lesson, we are going to explore a very powerful and practical topic that can completely change the way you speak English in daily life. 200 plus essential phrasal verbs for daily English conversations. These are the expressions that native speakers use every day. And once you start using them, your English will sound more natural, more fluent, and more confident. Throughout this lesson, we will go through real-life situations and examples that will help you understand how phrasal verbs are actually used in everyday conversations. You will learn how to use them when talking about your daily routine, your work, your feelings, your plans, and your experiences. I will guide you step by step so you can not only understand these expressions, but also start using them easily in your own sentences. Many English learners find phrasal verbs confusing at first, but don't worry. By the end of this video, you will feel much more comfortable and confident using them in real conversations. You will also practice with me so you can train your brain to think in English and speak more naturally without translating. Before we start the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon if you want more helpful English learning lessons like this, because we are here every day to support your English journey. So, take a deep breath, relax your mind, grab a pen and paper, if you like, and let's start learning together. Let's start with something simple and natural. Imagine you wake up in the morning and begin your day. In real English conversations, we don't always use formal verbs. Instead, we often use phrasal verbs. These are small combinations of verbs with prepositions or adverbs that completely change the meaning, and they are everywhere in daily English. So today, we will start building your understanding, step by step, in a calm and easy way. When you wake up, one of the most common phrasal verbs you will hear is wake up. For example, you can say, I wake up at 7 a.m. every day. Or, I woke up late this morning. This is one of the simplest phrasal verbs, but also one of the most useful. Now, let's add another one. Get up. It sounds similar, but it is slightly different. Wake up is when your eyes open, but get up is when you actually leave your bed. So you might say, I woke up at 7, but I got up at 7:30. Can you feel the difference? This is how natural English works. Now let's continue with your morning routine. After you get up, you might turn off your alarm. For example, I turned off my alarm quickly because it was too loud. Turn off means to stop something, like a device. The opposite of this is turn on. For example, I turned on the lights because it was still dark. These two phrasal verbs are extremely common and used in many daily situations. After that, you might wash up. This means to wash your hands and face. Sometimes people also say, I need to wash up before breakfast, or he went to the bathroom to wash up. Now, another common one is put on, which means to wear something. For example, I put on my clothes quickly because I was in a hurry. You can also say, she put on her jacket before going outside. Now, see, let's slow down a little and practice together. I will say a sentence, and you repeat it in your mind, or out loud, if you can. Imagine your morning clearly. I wake up early, I get up slowly, I turn off my alarm, I turn on the light, I wash up, I put on my clothes. Take a moment, repeat these again, and try to feel the rhythm of English. This is how you build fluency, not by memorizing rules, but by repeating natural patterns, again and again. Now, let's continue. After getting ready, you might make up your bed. This means to arrange your bed neatly. For example, I always make up my bed before I leave my room. This is a very common daily habit. Then you might go out. For example, I go out for a walk in the morning, or I went out to buy some milk. Another important phrasal verb is pick up. This one has many meanings, but in daily life, one common meaning is to collect something. For example, I picked up my phone when it rang, or I need to pick up some groceries on my way home. You can see how flexible this phrasal verb is. Now, see, let's connect these into a natural mini-story. Listen carefully. I woke up at 7 a.m. I got up after a few minutes. I turned off my alarm and turned on the lights. Then I washed up and put on my clothes. After that, I made up my bed and went out for a short walk. On my way back, I picked up some fresh bread from the store. Now, this is real English, simple, natural, and full of phrasal verbs. Now, let's practice again, but this time, I will pause a little more so you can repeat after me. I woke up early. I got up quickly. I turned off my alarm. I turned on the light. I washed up. I put on my clothes. I made up my bed. I went out. I picked up some groceries. Good. Take a deep breath. You are doing great. Now, let's move into another part of your day. Breakfast time. You might sit down to eat. For example, I sat down and had my breakfast. Sit down simply means to take a seat. After eating, you might clean up. For example, I cleaned up the kitchen. After breakfast, this means to make something tidy again. Another useful phrasal verb here is run out of. This means you have no more of something. For example, I ran out of milk this morning. Or, we ran out of sugar. This is something you will say very often in real conversations. Now, let's practice with a small conversation style. I sat down for breakfast. I realized I ran out of milk. So I went out again. I picked up some milk. Then I came back and cleaned up the kitchen. Now, please notice something important. These phrasal verbs help you speak smoothly. Instead of thinking too much, you just follow the flow. Let's continue. After breakfast, you might head out for work or school. For example, I headed out at 8 a.m. This means to leave or go somewhere. Another similar one is set off. For example, I set off early to avoid traffic. Now, imagine this full situation. I woke up early. I got up quickly. I turned off my alarm. I washed up and put on my clothes. I made up my bed. I sat down for breakfast. But I ran out of milk, so I went out and picked some up. Then I came back, cleaned up, and headed out for work. This is how English flows naturally. Simple actions, connected with phrasal verbs. Now, so let's do a slightly deeper practice. I will guide you to speak, in your mind. Say this slowly. This morning. I woke up at. I got up at. I turned off. I turned on. I washed up and put on. I made up. I went out and picked up. Then I came back and cleaned up. Finally, I headed out. Pause here and complete these sentences with your own life. This is how you make English personal and powerful. Now, let's add a few more useful phrasal verbs for daily conversations. Look for, which means to search. For example, I was looking for my keys this morning. Another one is find out, which means to discover information. For example, I found out that the meeting was canceled. You can combine them in real life. I was looking for my keys, and then I found them under the table. Or, I looked for information online and found out the answer. Now, let's practice again. I looked for my phone. I found it in my bag. I found out something new today. Very good. Keep going. Another important phrasal verb is come back, which means to return. For example, I came back home in the evening. And also, go back, which means to return to a place. For example, I went back to the store because I forgot something. Now, let's connect more ideas. I went out in the morning. I came back home later. Then I went back to the store. You see how natural this sounds. Now, take a moment, relax, and repeat everything in your mind. Don't rush. Fluency grows slowly, but strongly. We are just getting started, and you're already learning so many useful phrasal verbs that you can use today in real-life conversations. Keep listening, keep repeating, and keep imagining your own daily situations. Let's continue building your fluency step by step. Now, that you have practiced some basic phrasal verbs for your morning routine, we are going to move deeper into your daily life, especially how you communicate, interact with people, and handle everyday situations using natural English. Imagine you arrive at your workplace, your school, or even a place where you meet people. One of the most common phrasal verbs you will use is talk to. For example, I talked to my manager this morning, or I need to talk to you about something important. This is simple, but very powerful in daily conversations. Now, let's add another one. Speak up. This means to talk louder or more clearly. For example, can you speak up? I can't hear you. This is something you will hear very often, especially when communication is not clear. Another useful phrasal verb is come in. For example, please come in, or she came in late today. This simply means to enter a place, and the opposite is go out, which you already learned, so you can say, he came in quietly, and then went out after a few minutes. Now, let's build a short real-life situation. I came into the office. I talked to my colleague, but he asked me to speak up because it was noisy. Now, pause and repeat that slowly in your mind. Feel the flow. Let's move forward during your day. You often need to deal with situations. This is a very important phrasal verb. Deal with means to handle something. For example, I had to deal with a difficult customer today, or she deals with problems very calmly. Now, let's connect it with another one. Work on, which means to focus your effort on something. For example, I am working on a new project. Or, I worked on my English speaking skills today. Listen to this small example. I came in early. I worked on my tasks, and I had to deal with a few problems. This is exactly how native speakers talk. Now, let's slow down and practice together again. I came in. I talked to my colleague. I spoke up clearly. I worked on my tasks. I dealt with a problem. Good. Keep going. You are building real fluency. Now, let's continue with communication phrasal verbs. One very common one is call back. For example, I will call you back later. This means you will return someone's call. Another one is pick up, which you already learned, but now, in a different context. For example, she didn't pick up the phone. You can combine them like this. I called him, but he didn't pick up, so he called me back later. Now, repeat this slowly. This is how you train your brain. Another useful one is hang up, which means to end a phone call. For example, don't hang up. I need to tell you something. Or, he hung up suddenly. Now, listen to this conversation-style example. I called her, but she didn't pick up. Then she called me back. We talked for a while, and then she hung up. This is natural, everyday English. Now, let's move into social situations. When you meet someone, you might run into them. This means to meet someone unexpectedly. For example, I ran into an old friend at the market. Another one is get along with, which means to have a good relationship. For example, I get along with my coworkers very well. Now, listen carefully. I ran into my friend yesterday. We talked for a while, and I realized we still get along very well. Now, repeat that, slowly. I ran into my friend. We talked. We get along well. Excellent. Now, let's continue. Sometimes you need to help out, which means to help someone. For example, I helped out my colleague with a task. Or, she always helps out her friends. Another useful one is figure out, which means to understand or solve something. For example, I couldn't figure out the problem, or I finally figured it out. Now, let's connect them. I helped out my friend, and together we figured out the solution. This is how phrasal verbs naturally combine in real conversations. Now, let's practice again. I helped out. I figured it out. We solved the problem. Take your time. Repeat again. Now. Let's move into another situation. Sometimes things don't go as planned, and you need to give up. This means to stop trying. For example, don't give up. Keep practicing. Another one is keep on, which means to continue. For example, keep on learning. Keep on trying. Now, listen to this motivational example. I felt tired, but I didn't give up. I kept on practicing my English. Now, repeat that. Feel the emotion. I didn't give up. I kept on going. Very good. Now, let's add another important phrasal verb, take care of, which means to look after something or someone. For example, I take care of my responsibilities, or she takes care of her family. Now, connect it. I work hard. I take care of my tasks, and I don't give up. This is powerful, simple English. Now, so let's go a little deeper into daily life situations. Imagine you are busy and need to organize your time. You might say, catch up. This means to reach the same level or to do something you missed. For example, I need to catch up on my work, or let's catch up later. Another one is fall behind, which is the opposite. For example, I fell behind on my work because I was sick. Now, listen carefully. I fell behind last week, but today I am trying to catch up. Now, repeat. I fell behind. I need to catch up. Excellent. Now, let's bring everything together in a longer daily life story. I came into work early. I talked to my manager and worked on my tasks. I had to deal with a few problems, but I didn't give up. I kept on trying. Later, I ran into a colleague and we helped each other out. Together, we figured out a solution. I realized I had fallen behind on some work, so I stayed late to catch up after finishing everything. I called a friend, but he didn't pick up. He called me back later, and we talked before hanging up. This is real conversational English, natural, connected, and full of useful phrasal verbs. Now, take a moment, pause, close your eyes if you want, and imagine your own day. Try to describe it using these phrasal verbs. Don't worry about mistakes, just keep going. Say this in your mind. Today, I came in, I worked on, I dealt with. I talked to, I helped out, I figured out, I didn't give up, I caught up on. This is how you train fluency, step by step, with real-life language. We are building something strong here, and now we will continue with even more useful phrasal verbs that you can use in conversations about feelings, plans, and everyday situations. Let's continue. You are doing really well. Now, we are going to move into another very important part of daily English, talking about your feelings, emotions, and personal experiences. And this is where phrasal verbs become even more powerful, because native speakers use them all the time to express how they feel in a natural and relaxed way. Let's begin with a very common one. Cheer up. This means to become happier or to make someone feel happier. For example, I was feeling sad, but my friend helped me cheer up. Or, cheer up. Everything will be okay. Now, let's add another one. Calm down. This means to relax after feeling angry or nervous. For example, I needed some time to calm down after the argument, or just calm down and take a deep breath. Now, he listened to this simple situation. I felt stressed, so I tried to calm down. Later, I talked to a friend, and it helped me cheer up. Now, repeat slowly. I calmed down. I cheered up. Good. Keep going. Now, let's continue. Sometimes you feel excited or happy about something. You can use look forward to. This is a very important phrasal verb. For example, I'm looking forward to the weekend, or I look forward to meeting you. Another one is end up, which means the final result of a situation. For example, I planned to study, but I ended up watching a movie. Now, listen carefully. I was looking forward to studying, but I ended up getting distracted. Now, repeat. I looked forward to it. I ended up doing something else. This is very natural English. Now, let's go deeper into emotional expressions. Sometimes you need to open up, which means to share your feelings. For example, it's hard for him to open up about his emotions, or she opened up to me about her problems. Another one is bottle up, which means to keep your feelings inside. For example, don't bottle up your emotions. It's better to talk about them. Now, connect them. He didn't open up. He kept everything bottled up. Now, repeat that slowly. He opened up. He bottled up his feelings. Very good. Now. So let's move into situations where something surprises you. You can use find out, which you learned earlier, but now, in an emotional context. For example, I found out something surprising today. Another one is turn out, which means the result of something. For example, the day turned out better than I expected. Now, listen, I was worried at first, but everything turned out fine. Now, repeat, it turned out well. Excellent. Now, let's continue. With reactions and feelings, sometimes you feel tired or exhausted. You can use wear out. For example, the long day really wore me out. Another one is burnout, which is a stronger version. It means extreme exhaustion from too much work. For example, he burned out after working too hard. Now, listen carefully. I worked all day, and it really wore me out. Now, repeat. I was worn out. Good, keep going. Now, let's talk about motivation and effort. Sometimes, you need to push through, which means to continue, despite difficulty. For example, I felt tired, but I pushed through and finished my work. Another one is keep up, which means to stay at the same level or continue. For example, it's hard to keep up with everything. Now, connect them. I was tired, but I pushed through, and I tried to keep up with my tasks. Now, repeat. I pushed through. I kept up. Very good. Now, so let's move into social emotions and reactions. Sometimes, you might get over something, which means to recover from a problem or emotion. For example, it took me time to get over the disappointment. Another one is move on, which means to continue your life after something ends. For example, it's time to move on and focus on the future. Now, listen, I was upset, but I got over it and I moved on. Now, repeat, I got over it. I moved on. Excellent. Now, let's build a longer emotional story using these phrasal verbs. I had a stressful day. At first, I felt overwhelmed, so I tried to calm down. I talked to a friend, and it helped me cheer up. I realized I had been bottling up my feelings, so I decided to open up. Later, I found out that things were not as bad as I thought. In the end, everything turned out fine. Even though I felt worn out, I pushed through and finished my work. Now, I am ready to move on and focus on tomorrow. This is natural, smooth, and emotionally expressive English. Now let's practice together again, slowly, with feeling. I felt stressed. I calmed down. I cheered up. I opened up. I didn't bottle up my feelings. I found out something new. Everything turned out fine. I was worn out. I pushed through. I got over it. I moved on. Take your time. Repeat again. This is how you build confidence. Now, let's move into planning and decision-making, which is another important part of daily conversations. One common phrasal verb is plan ahead, which means to prepare for the future. For example, I like to plan ahead for my week. Another one is think over, which means to consider something carefully. For example, I need to think it over before making a decision. Now, listen, I planned ahead, but I still needed to think things over. Now, so repeat, I planned ahead, I thought it over. Good. Another useful one is go with, which means to choose something. For example, I decided to go with the first option and turn down, which means to reject something. For example, I turned down the offer. Now, connect them. I thought it over, and I decided to go with a better option. I turned down the first one. Now, repeat. I went with it. I turned it down. Excellent. Now, let's bring everything together in one natural daily life flow. I woke up feeling a bit stressed, but I tried to calm down. I planned ahead for my day and thought things over during the day. I worked hard and pushed through my tasks, even though I felt worn out. I didn't give up. Later, I talked to a friend, and it helped me cheer up. I opened up about my feelings instead of bottling them up. In the end, everything turned out well, and I felt ready to move on. Now, pause and imagine your own day again. Use these expressions in your mind. Make your own sentences. Say it slowly. Today, I felt. I tried to calm down. I cheered up. I opened up. I didn't bottle up. I pushed through. I got over. I moved on. You are training your brain to think in English. This is the key to fluency. Keep going. We are building something strong together. And now, we will explore more phrasal verbs related to travel, movement, and everyday actions that you use when going outside, meeting people, and living your daily life. Let's continue. You are building a strong and natural flow in English. Now, we are going to move into another very practical area of daily conversations: movement, travel, and everyday actions outside your home. This is where phrasal verbs become even more visible in real life, because almost every action we describe uses them. Imagine you are leaving your home. One of the most common phrasal verbs is step out. For example, I stepped out for a few minutes, or I need to step out and take a call. This simply means to leave a place for a short time. Another very common one is head out, which you learned earlier, but now, let's use it more naturally. For example, I'm heading out now. Or, we headed out early in the morning. Now, let's connect them. I stepped out for a while, and then I headed out to meet a friend. Now, repeat slowly. I stepped out. I headed out. Good. Keep going. Now, let's talk about transportation. When you enter a car, bus, or train, you can say, get in. For example, I got in the car and left. And when you leave it, you say, get out. For example, I got out of the car near the store. Now, listen carefully. I got in the car. I drove for a while, and then I got out near the market. Now, repeat. I got in. I got out. Excellent. Another very useful pair is get on and get off. We use these for buses, trains, or planes. For example, I got on the bus at 8, and I got off at the next stop. Now, listen. I got on the bus and got off near my office. Now, repeat. I got on. I got off. Very good. Now, let's continue. When you arrive somewhere, you can use show up. For example, he showed up late, or she didn't show up at all. This means to arrive, often unexpectedly or later than expected. Another one is drop by, which means to visit someone for a short time. For example, I dropped by my friend's house yesterday. Now, connect them. I showed up late, but I still dropped by to say hello. Now, repeat. I showed up. I dropped by. Good. Now, let's move into everyday errands. When you go to a place quickly, you might say, stop by. For example, I stopped by the store on my way home. This is very common in daily conversations. Another one is pick up, which you already know, but now, again in real-life movement. For example, I picked up some food on the way back. Now, listen, I stopped by the store and picked up some snacks. Now, repeat. I stopped by. I picked up something. Excellent. Now, let's talk about directions and movement. One important phrasal verb is go along, which means to continue moving in a direction. For example, go along this road and turn left. Another one is turn around, which means to change direction. For example, I turned around because I forgot something. Now, listen carefully. I went along the street, then I turned around and came back. Now, repeat. I went along. I turned around. Very good. Now, let's continue. Sometimes you need to look around, which means to explore a place. For example, I looked around the market, or we looked around the city. Another one is check out, which means to examine or explore something. For example, let's check out this new place. Now, connect them. I looked around the area and checked out a few shops. Now, please repeat. I looked around. I checked it out. Good. Keep going. Now, let's move into situations where things happen unexpectedly. You might run out of something, which you already learned, but now, in a real outdoor situation, for example, I ran out of cash while shopping. Another one is come across, which means to find something by chance. For example, I came across an interesting book. Now, listen, I ran out of money, but I came across a small cafe and decided to relax. Now, repeat. I ran out of something. I came across something. Excellent. Now, let's talk about returning home. You can use come back and go back, but also another useful one is head back. For example, I headed back home after a long day. Now, connect them. I headed out in the morning and headed back in the evening. Now, Anji, repeat. I headed back. Very natural. Now, let's build a longer real-life story using these phrasal verbs. I stepped out of my house in the morning. I headed out to work. I got on the bus and got off near my office. I showed up a bit late, but everything was fine. After work, I stopped by a store and picked up some groceries. Then I looked around the area and checked out a new cafe. Later, I got in a car and headed back home. On the way, I ran out of cash, but I came across a small shop where I could pay by card. Finally, I got out of the car and went back home feeling relaxed. Now, pause and imagine this clearly. Now, let's practice together. I stepped out, I headed out, I got on, I got off, I showed up, I stopped by, I picked up something, I looked around, I checked it out, I came across something, I headed back. Repeat again, slowly, feel the rhythm. Now, let's add a few more useful phrasal verbs for movement. Walk around. For example, I walked around the park, and hang around, which means to stay in a place without a clear purpose. For example, we hung around after the meeting. Now, listen. I walked around the park and then hung around with my friends. Now, repeat. I walked around. I hung around. Good. Another important one is move around, which means to change places. For example, I moved around the city a lot today, and sit around, which means to do nothing. For example, I don't want to sit around all day, now. Mine connect them. I didn't sit around. I moved around and stayed active. Now, repeat. I didn't sit around. I moved around. Excellent. Now, take a deep breath. You are doing really well. You are not just learning phrasal verbs. You are learning how to think and speak in real English situations. Now, imagine your own day outside and say it in your mind. Today, I stepped out. I headed out. I got on. I got off. I stopped by. I picked up. I looked around. I came across. I headed back. This is how fluency becomes natural. Keep going. We are building a strong foundation, and now, we will explore more phrasal verbs related to food, shopping, and everyday interactions that you experience almost every day. Let's continue. You are building strong momentum now, and your understanding of phrasal verbs is becoming more natural. Step by step. Now, we are going to move into another very important part of daily life: food, shopping, and everyday interactions. These are situations you experience almost every day, and native speakers use phrasal verbs constantly in these moments. Imagine you are feeling hungry and thinking about food. One very common phrasal verb is eat out, which means to eat at a restaurant. For example, I like to eat out on weekends, or we ate out last night. Now, let's add another one. Grab something, which means to get something quickly, usually food. For example, I grabbed a sandwich before work. Now, connect them. I didn't have time to cook, so I grabbed something quickly, or I decided to eat out. Now, repeat slowly. I ate out. I grabbed something. Good. Keep going. Now, let's move into ordering food. A very useful phrasal verb is order in, which means to order food to your home. For example, I was tired, so I ordered in. Another one is take away, which means to buy food and eat it somewhere else. For example, I got some takeaway and went home. Now, listen carefully. I didn't want to cook, so I ordered in. Or, sometimes I take food away. Now, repeat. I ordered in. I took it away. Excellent. Now, let's talk about cooking. One useful phrasal verb is heat up. For example, I heated up some food. Another one is cut up, which means to cut into pieces. For example, I cut up some vegetables. Now, connect them. I cut up the vegetables and then heated up the food. Now, repeat. I cut up. I heated up. Very good. Now, let's move into shopping situations. When you go shopping, you often try on clothes. For example, I tried on a jacket. Another one is pick out, which means to choose something. For example, I picked out a nice shirt. Now, listen. I tried on a few clothes and picked out the best one. Now, repeat. I tried it on. I picked it out. Excellent. Now, let's continue. Sometimes you need to pay for something. For example, I paid for my groceries. And another one is check out, which means to complete your purchase. For example, I checked out at the counter. Now, connect them. I picked out what I needed, paid for it, and checked out. Now, repeat. I paid for it. I checked out. Good. Now, let's move into situations where something is not available. You can use sell out, which means something is no longer available because it was all sold. For example, the product sold out quickly. Another one is run out of, which you already know. For example, The store ran out of bread. Now. Listen, I wanted to buy it, but it's sold out. Now. Repeat. It's sold out. Very natural. Now. Let's talk about returning items. Sometimes you might take back something, which means to return it to the store. For example, I took back the shirt because it didn't fit. Another one is give back, which means to return something to someone. For example, I gave back the money. Now. Connect them. I took back the item and gave it back to the seller. Now. Repeat. I took it back. I gave it back. Excellent. Now. So let's move into daily interactions with people. Sometimes you might wait for someone. For example, I waited for my friend. Another one is meet up, which means to meet someone socially. For example, let's meet up later. Now, listen, I waited for my friend, and then we met up. Now, repeat. I waited for, I met up. Good. Now, let's continue. When you spend time together, you might hang out, which means to spend time casually. For example, we hung out at a cafe. Another one is catch up, which you learned earlier, but now, in a social context. For example, we caught up after a long time. Now, connect them. We hung out and caught up. Now, repeat. We hung out. We caught up. Very natural. Now. Let's build a longer daily life story using these phrasal verbs. I felt hungry, so I decided to eat out. But first, I grabbed something small because I was in a hurry. Later, I met up with a friend, and we hung out at a cafe. We ordered food and talked for a while to catch up. After that, I went shopping. I tried on a few clothes and picked out what I liked. I paid for everything and checked out. But one item didn't fit well, so I took it back the next day and gave it back to the store. In the evening, I didn't feel like cooking, so I ordered in and relaxed at home. Now, pause. Imagine this clearly. This is your real life. In English. Now. Let's practice together again. I ate out. I grabbed something. I ordered in. I took it away. I cut up. I heated up. I tried it on. I picked it out. I paid for it. I checked out. I took it back. I gave it back. I met up. I hung out. I caught up. Repeat again, slowly, with feeling. Now. Let's add a few more useful phrasal verbs related to daily interactions. Bring up, which means to mention something in a conversation. For example, he brought up an interesting topic. Another one is talk over, which means to discuss something. For example, let's talk it over. Now, listen. We met up and brought up some important topics. We talked everything over. Now. Repeat. I brought it up. We talked it over. Excellent. Another one is come over, which means to visit someone's home. For example, come over this evening. And drop off, which means to leave something or someone at a place. For example, I dropped off my friend at home. Now, connect them. My friend came over, and later I dropped him off. Now, repeat. He came over. I dropped him off. Very good. Now, take a deep breath. You are building real, natural English, step by step. Now, imagine your own day again and describe it in your mind. Today, I ate out. I met up with. We hung out. We talked things over. I picked out. I paid for. I came home and ordered in. This is how you start thinking in English, without translating. Keep going. You are doing great. And now, we will continue with even more phrasal verbs related to work, productivity, and daily responsibilities, so you can express yourself clearly in any situation. Let's continue. You are building a strong connection with English now, and your ability to understand and use phrasal verbs is growing naturally. Now, we are going to focus on work, productivity, and daily responsibilities. These are situations where phrasal verbs are used constantly in real conversations, whether you are talking about your job, your studies, or your daily tasks. Let's begin with a very common one, start off, which means to begin something. For example, I started off my day with an important task, or let's start off with something simple. Now, add another one, carry on, which means to continue. For example, I carried on working even after lunch. Now, connect them. I started off early and carried on working throughout the day. Now, repeat slowly. I started off, I carried on. Good. Keep going. Now, let's talk about handling tasks. A very useful phrasal verb is take on, which means to accept responsibility. For example, I took on a new project. Another one is handle, using a phrasal form deal with, which you already learned, but now, again, in work context. For example, I had to deal with a lot of tasks today. Now, listen. I took on a new responsibility and dealt with it carefully. Now. So repeat. I took it on, I dealt with it. Excellent. Now, let's move into completing tasks. One important phrasal verb is finish off, which means to complete something. For example, I finished off my work before leaving. Another one is wrap up, which also means to complete something, often at the end. For example, let's wrap up this meeting. Now, connect them. I finished off my tasks and wrapped up the day successfully. Now, repeat. I finished it off. I wrapped it up. Very good. Now, let's continue. Sometimes you need to keep up with your work. This means to stay at the same level. For example, I try to keep up with my assignments. Another one is fall behind, which you already know. For example, I fell behind because I was busy. Now, listen. I fell behind for a few days, but now I am trying to keep up. Now. Repeat. I fell behind. I kept up. Excellent. Now, let's talk about improving your work or skills. You can use work on, which you already learned, but also build up, which means to gradually improve. For example, I am building up my confidence. Another one is brush up on, which means to improve a skill you already have. For example, I need to brush up on my English. Now, connect them. I am working on my skills and trying to build them up. I also brush up on my English every day. Now, repeat. I worked on it. I built it up. I brushed up on it. Good. Now, let's move into communication at work. Sometimes you need to bring up something. For example, I brought up an issue in the meeting. Another one is point out, which means to show or explain something clearly. For example, she pointed out a mistake. Now listen. I brought up a problem, and my manager pointed it out clearly. Now, repeat. I brought it up. She pointed it out. Very natural. Now, let's continue. Sometimes you need to go over something, which means to review. For example, I went over my notes. Another one is look into, which means to investigate. For example, I will look into this issue. Now, connect them. I went over my work and looked into the problem. Now, repeat. I went over it. I looked into it. Excellent. Now, let's talk about deadlines and pressure. Sometimes you need to catch up on work, which you already know. For example, I need to catch up on my tasks. Another one is get through, which means to complete something difficult. For example, I got through a lot of work today. Now, listen. I had a lot to do, but I got through everything. Now, repeat. I got through it. Very good. Now, let's move into teamwork. Sometimes you need to work together, or in phrasal form, team up. For example, we teamed up to finish the project. Another one is help out, which you already know. For example, we helped each other out. Now, connect them. We teamed up and helped each other out. Now, repeat. We teamed up. We helped out. Excellent. Now, let's build a longer work-related story using these phrasal verbs. I started off my day early. I took on a new project and worked on it carefully. I had to deal with several problems, but I didn't fall behind. I tried to keep up with everything. I went over my notes and looked into some issues. During the meeting, I brought up an important point, and my manager pointed out a few improvements. Later, I teamed up with a colleague, and we helped each other out. Together, we got through all the work. In the end, I finished off my tasks and wrapped up the day feeling satisfied. Now, pause and imagine this clearly. Now, let's practice together again. I started off, I carried on, I took on, I dealt with, I finished it off, I wrapped it up, I kept up, I fell behind, I worked on, I built up, I brushed up on, I brought it up, I pointed it out, I went over, I looked into, I got through, I teamed up, I helped out. Repeat slowly. Take your time. Now, let's add a few more useful phrasal verbs related to responsibility. Take over, which means to take control. For example, she took over the project, and hand in, which means to submit something. For example, I handed in my report. Now, connect them. I finished my work and handed it in. Later, someone else took over. Now, repeat. I handed it in. She took over. Very good. Another useful one is set up, which means to arrange something. For example, I set up a meeting, and carry out, which means to perform a task. For example, we carried out the plan. Now, listen. I set up a plan and carried it out successfully. Now, repeat. I set it up. I carried it out. Excellent. Now, take a deep breath. You are doing really well. You are learning how to express real-life work situations in English with confidence and clarity. Now, we imagine your own day again and say it in your mind. Today, I started off. I worked on. I dealt with. I brought up. I looked into. I got through. I finished off. I handed in. This is how you move from basic English to fluent English. Keep going. Now, we will continue with even more phrasal verbs related to relationships, conversations, and everyday communication, so you can speak naturally in any situation. Let's continue. You are making steady progress, and your understanding of phrasal verbs is becoming more natural and automatic. Now, we are going to focus on relationships, conversations, and everyday communication. This is one of the most important areas because it helps you connect with people and express yourself clearly in real-life situations. Let's begin with a very common phrasal verb, get along, which means to have a good relationship with someone. For example, I get along with my neighbors, or they get along very well. Now, let's add another one, fall out, which means to have an argument and stop being friendly. For example, they fell out over a small issue. Now, connect them. We used to get along well, but then we fell out. Now, repeat slowly. We get along. We fell out. Good. Keep going. Now. Let's continue. Sometimes you want to improve a relationship. You can use make up, which means to become friends again after an argument. For example, they argued, but later they made up. Another one is sort out, which means to solve a problem. For example, we talked and sorted things out. Now, listen. We had a disagreement, but we sorted it out and made up. Now, repeat. We sorted it out. We made up. Excellent. Now, let's move into conversations. One important phrasal verb is bring up, which you already learned, but now, more in social context. For example, she brought up an interesting topic during dinner. Another one is talk about, which is simple but very common. For example, we talked about our plans. Now, connect them. We met and brought up different topics. We talked about many things. Now, so repeat. We brought it up. We talked about it. Very natural. Now, let's continue. Sometimes you need to listen to someone carefully. And another useful one is hear from, which means to receive communication. For example, I haven't heard from him in a while. Now, listen. I listened to her carefully, but I haven't heard from her since. Now, repeat. I listened to, I heard from, good. Now, let's move into expressing opinions and reactions. You can use agree with. For example, I agree with you, and disagree with. For example, I disagree with that idea. Now, connect them. I don't always agree with him, but we still get along. Now, repeat. I agree with. I disagree with. Excellent. Now, let's talk about communication problems. Sometimes you need to clear up, which means to solve confusion. For example, let's clear up the misunderstanding. Another one is figure out, which you already know. For example, we tried to figure out the issue. Now, listen. There was confusion, but we cleared it up and figured everything out. Now, repeat. We cleared it up. We figured it out. Very good. Now, let's continue. Sometimes conversations become difficult, and you might break down, which means to lose control emotionally. For example, she broke down during the conversation. Another one is calm down, which you already know. For example, he tried to calm down before speaking. Now, connect them. He almost broke down, but he managed to calm down. Now, repeat. He broke down. He calmed down. Good. Now, let's move into making plans with people. One very common phrasal verb is meet up, which you already know. Another one is get together, which means to meet socially. For example, let's get together this weekend. Now, listen. We decided to meet up and get together for dinner. Now, repeat. We met up. We got together. Excellent. Now, let's continue. When you stay in touch with someone, you can use keep in touch. For example, let's keep in touch. Another one is reach out, which means to contact someone. For example, I reached out to an old friend. Now, connect them. I reached out to him, and we decided to keep in touch. Now, repeat. I reached out. We kept in touch. Very natural. Now. Let's move into supporting others. Sometimes you need to stand by someone, which means to support them. For example, I will stand by you. Another one is look after, which means to take care of someone. For example, she looks after her younger brother. Now, listen. I stood by my friend and looked after him when he needed help. Now, repeat. I stood by. I looked after. Excellent. Now, let's build a longer relationship-based story using these phrasal verbs. I have a close friend, and we usually get along very well, but sometimes we fall out over small things. When that happens, we talk about the issue and try to sort it out. We always make up in the end. Recently, we met up and got together for dinner. We brought up many interesting topics and talked about our future plans. Even when we disagree with each other, we listen carefully and try to understand. If there is any confusion, we clear it up quickly. We also make sure to keep in touch and reach out regularly. I always stand by my friend, and we support each other in difficult times. Now, pause, and imagine your own relationships. Now let's practice together again. I get along with. I fell out with. I made up with. I sorted it out. I brought it up. I talked about. I listened to. I heard from. I agreed with. I disagreed with. I cleared it up. I figured it out. I met up. I got together. I kept in touch. I reached out. I stood by. I looked after. Repeat slowly. Take your time. Now, let's add a few more useful phrasal verbs for conversations. Cut in, which means to interrupt. For example, he cut in while I was speaking, and carry on, which means to continue speaking. For example, please carry on. Now, listen. She was talking, and someone cut in, but she carried on. Now, Saya, repeat. He cut in. She carried on. Good. Another useful one is speak out, which means to express your opinion strongly. For example, she spoke out about the issue. And back up, which means to support with evidence. For example, he backed up his argument with facts. Now, connect them. She spoke out and backed up her opinion. Now, repeat. She spoke out. She backed it up. Excellent. Now, take a deep breath. You are doing very well. You are learning how to communicate naturally in English, using phrasal verbs that native speakers use every day. Now, imagine your own conversations and say this in your mind. Today, I talked to, I brought up, I listened to, I agreed with, I cleared up, I reached out, I kept in touch. This is how fluency becomes part of your daily thinking. Keep going. Now, we will continue with even more phrasal verbs related to problems, challenges, and solutions, so you can express yourself confidently in any situation. Let's continue. You are doing an excellent job staying focused and building your English step by step. Now, we are going to explore phrasal verbs related to problems, challenges, and solutions. This is a very important area because in real life, we often need to explain difficulties, describe situations, and talk about how we solve problems. And phrasal verbs make this sound much more natural and fluent. Let's begin with a very common one, run into, which means to experience a problem. For example, I ran into some issues at work, or we ran into a problem during the project. Now, let's add another one. Deal with, which you already know. But now, we use it again in problem situations. For example, I had to deal with a difficult situation. Now, connect them. I ran into a problem, but I dealt with it calmly. Now, repeat slowly. I ran into a problem. I dealt with it. Good. Keep going. Now. Let's continue. Sometimes problems come up, which means they appear unexpectedly. For example, something came up, so I had to change my plan. Another one is sort out, which means to solve a problem. For example, I will sort it out soon. Now, listen. A problem came up, but I sorted it out. Now, repeat. It came up. I sorted it out. Excellent. Now, let's move into understanding problems. Sometimes you need to figure out something, which you already know. Another one is work out, which also means to find a solution. For example, I worked out the answer. Now, connect them. I couldn't figure it out at first, but then I worked it out. Now, repeat. I figured it out. I worked it out. Very good. Now, let's continue. Sometimes things don't go as planned, and you need to fix up something. For example, I fixed up the problem. Another one is patch up, which means to repair or improve a situation, especially relationships or small problems. For example, we patched things up. Now, listen. We had a problem, but we fixed it up and patched things up. Now, repeat. I fixed it up. We patched it up. Excellent. Now, let's move into difficult situations. Sometimes you need to get through something, which you already learned. But now, in a challenge context, for example, I got through a tough day. Another one is pull through, which means to survive or recover from a difficult situation. For example, he pulled through after a hard time. Now, connect them. It was difficult, but I got through it and pulled through in the end. Now, repeat. I got through it. I pulled through. Very good. Now, let's continue. Sometimes problems become bigger, and you need to break down the situation. This can mean to analyze something step by step. For example, let's break it down and understand it. Another one is point out, which you already know. For example, she pointed out the issue. Now, listen. We broke the problem down and pointed out the main issue. Now, repeat. We broke it down. We pointed it out. Excellent. Now, let's move into taking action. Sometimes you need to step in, which means to take control in a situation. For example, he stepped in to help. Another one is sort out, again, because it is very common. Now, connect them. The situation got difficult, so I stepped in and sorted it out. Now, repeat. I stepped in. I sorted it out. Good. Now. Let's continue. Sometimes you need to back out, which means to withdraw from something. For example, he backed out of the plan. Another one is turn down, which means to reject. For example, I turned down the offer. Now, listen. I decided to back out and turn down the offer. Now, repeat. I backed out. I turned it down. Very natural. Now, let's move into persistence and determination. Sometimes you need to keep on, which you already know. Another one is stick to, which means to continue following something. For example, I stick to my plan. Now, connect them. I kept on trying and stuck to my plan. Now, repeat. I kept on. I stuck to it. Excellent. Now, let's build a longer real-life story using these phrasal verbs. I started my day with a clear plan, but soon I ran into a problem. Something unexpected came up, and I had to deal with it quickly. At first, I couldn't figure it out, but I worked it out step by step. I broke the problem down and pointed out the main issue. Then I stepped in and fixed it up. Even though it was difficult, I didn't give up. I kept on trying and stuck to my plan. In the end, I got through the challenge and pulled through successfully. Now, pause and imagine your own challenges. Now, let's practice together again. I ran into a problem. Something came up. I dealt with it. I figured it out. I worked it out. I fixed it up. I got through it. I pulled through. I broke it down. I stepped in. I sorted it out. I backed out. I turned it down. I kept on. I stuck to it. Repeat slowly. Feel the confidence growing. Now, let's add a few more useful phrasal verbs for problem situations. Look for, which means to search. For example, I looked for a solution, and come up with, which means to create or find an idea. For example, I came up with a solution. Now, connect them. I looked for answers and came up with a good solution. Now, repeat. I looked for it. I came up with it. Excellent. Another one is set back, which means to delay progress. For example, the problem set me back, and get over, which you already know. For example, I got over the difficulty. Now, listen. The problem set me back, but I got over it. Now, repeat. It set me back. I got over it. Very good. Now, take a deep breath. You are doing really well. You are learning how to talk about real problems and real solutions in natural English. Now, imagine your own situation and say it in your mind. Today, I ran into. Something came up. I dealt with it. I figured it out. I got through it. I came up with a solution. This is how you build strong, confident English. Keep going. Now, we will continue with even more phrasal verbs related to habits, lifestyle, and personal growth, so you can express your daily life even more naturally. Let's continue. You are doing an amazing job staying consistent, and now, your understanding of phrasal verbs is becoming more natural, more automatic, and more confident. Now, we are going to focus on habits, lifestyle, and personal growth. These are the kinds of conversations you have every day when you talk about your routine, your goals, and how you improve yourself. Let's begin with a very common one, wake up to, which means to become aware of something. For example, I woke up to the importance of learning English. Now, let's add another one. Cut down on, which means to reduce something. For example, I'm trying to cut down on junk food. Now, connect them. I woke up to the fact that I needed to change, so I started to cut down on unhealthy habits. Now, repeat slowly. I woke up to it. I cut down on it. Good. Keep going. Now. Let's continue. Sometimes you want to start a new habit. You can use take up, which means to begin a new activity. For example, I took up reading, or I took up learning English seriously. Another one is stick to, which you already know, but now, in habit context. For example, I stick to my routine. Now, listen, I took up a new habit, and I stuck to it. Now, repeat, I took it up. I stuck to it. Excellent. Now, let's move into stopping bad habits. One very useful phrasal verb is give up, which you already know. For example, I gave up smoking. Another one is cut out, which means to remove something completely. For example, I cut out sugar from my diet. Now, connect them. I gave up unhealthy habits and cut out bad routines. Now, repeat. I gave it up. I cut it out. Very good. Now, so let's continue. Sometimes habits take time to develop. You can use build up, which you learned earlier. For example, I'm building up a strong routine. Another one is keep up, which means to maintain. For example, I try to keep up my daily practice. Now, listen, I built up a habit. And now, I keep it up every day. Now, repeat. I built it up. I kept it up. Excellent. Now, let's move into personal improvement. Sometimes you need to work on yourself. For example, I'm working on my confidence. Another one is grow up, which can also mean to become more mature. For example, I grew up learning new skills. Now, connect them. I am working on myself and growing up with new experiences. Now, repeat. I worked on it. I grew up. Good. Now, let's continue. Sometimes you need to slow down, which means to reduce speed or pressure. For example, I need to slow down and relax. Another one is take it easy, which means to relax. For example, I decided to take it easy today. Now, listen, I slowed down and took it easy. Now, repeat. I slowed down. I took it easy. Very natural. Now, let's move into motivation. Sometimes you need to keep on, which you already know. Another one is move forward, which means to continue progressing. For example, I want to move forward in my life. Now, connect them. I kept on going and moved forward. Now, repeat. I kept on. I moved forward. Excellent. Now, let's continue. Sometimes you reflect on your life. You can use look back. For example, I look back at my progress. Another one is learn from, which means to gain knowledge from experience. For example, I learned from my mistakes. Now, listen. I looked back at my past and learned from my mistakes. Now, repeat. I looked back. I learned from it. Very good. Now, let's move into setting goals. Sometimes you need to plan ahead, which you learned earlier. Another one is set up, which means to arrange something. For example, I set up a schedule. Now, connect them. I planned ahead and set up a routine. Now, repeat. I planned ahead. I set it up. Excellent. Now, let's build a longer lifestyle and personal growth story using these phrasal verbs. I woke up to the fact that I needed to improve my life, so I started to cut down on unhealthy habits. I took up a new routine and tried to stick to it every day. I gave up bad habits and cut out things that were not helping me. Slowly, I built up a strong routine and kept it up consistently. I worked on myself and learned from my past mistakes. Sometimes, I slowed down and took it easy to relax. But I always kept on moving forward. When I look back now, I feel proud of my progress. Now, pause and imagine your own growth. Now, and let's practice together again. I woke up to, I cut down on, I took up, I stuck to, I gave up, I cut out, I built up, I kept up, I worked on, I slowed down, I took it easy, I kept on, I moved forward. I looked back. I learned from. Repeat slowly. Feel the meaning. Now, let's add a few more useful phrasal verbs for lifestyle. Burn out, which you already know, and wind down, which means to relax after stress. For example, I wind down in the evening. Now, connect them. I worked too much and almost burned out. So I decided to wind down. Now, repeat. I burned out. I wound down. Excellent. Another one is pick up, which can mean to improve. For example, my English is picking up, and fall into, which means to start doing something regularly, often unintentionally. For example, I fell into a bad habit. Now, and listen, I fell into a bad habit, but now I'm picking up good ones. Now, repeat. I fell into it. I picked it up. Very good. Now, take a deep breath. You are doing great. You are learning how to talk about your habits, your life, and your personal growth in natural English. Now, imagine your own day and your own life and say it in your mind. Today, I worked on, I tried to cut down on, I took up, I kept up, I moved forward, I learned from. This is how you build real fluency. Keep going. Now, we will continue with even more phrasal verbs related to time, daily routines, and common life situations. To complete your understanding even further, let's continue. You have come a long way now, and your fluency is growing stronger with every step. Now, we are going to focus on time, daily routines, and common life situations. These are expressions you use every single day when you talk about your schedule, your plans, and how your day flows. Let's begin with a very common phrasal verb, get up to, which means to do something, often something interesting or unexpected. For example, what did you get up to today? Or, I didn't get up to much. Now, let's add another one. Go on, which means to continue or to happen. For example, what's going on? Or, life goes on. Now, connect them. I didn't get up to much today, just the usual things going on. Now, repeat slowly. I got up to something. Something is going on. Good. Keep going. Now, let's continue. Sometimes you need to wake up early and then set off, which you learned earlier. Another useful one is start off, which you also know, but now, in a daily routine context. For example, I started off my day with exercise. Now, listen. I woke up early. I started off my day with a walk, and then I set off for work. Now, repeat. I started off. I set off. Excellent. Now, let's move into managing time. One very useful phrasal verb is run out of time. For example, I ran out of time today. Another one is take up, which means to use time. For example, this task took up most of my day. Now, connect them. I had a lot to do, but I ran out of time, and my work took up the whole day. Now, repeat. I ran out of time. It took up my time. Very good. Now, let's continue. Sometimes plans change. You can use put off, which means to delay. For example, I put off my plans. Another one is call off, which means to cancel. For example, the meeting was called off. Now, listen. I put off my plans, and then the meeting was called off. Now, repeat. I put it off. It was called off. Excellent. Now. So let's move into daily routines. Sometimes you need to wake up, get up, and then go through your routine. Go through means to complete or experience something. For example, I go through my daily routine every morning. Another one is carry on, which you know. Now, connect them. I woke up, got up, and went through my routine. Then I carried on with my day. Now, repeat. I went through it. I carried on. Very natural. Now, let's continue. Sometimes you need to fit in something, which means to include something in your schedule. For example, I tried to fit in some exercise. Another one is squeeze in, which is similar, but often used when time is limited. For example, I squeezed in a quick break. Now, listen. I was busy, but I managed to fit in some study time and squeezed in a short walk. Now, on repeat. I fit it in, I squeezed it in. Excellent. Now, let's move into unexpected situations. Sometimes things come up, which you already know. Another one is turn up, which means to arrive or appear. For example, something unexpected turned up. Now, connect them. Something came up, and another problem turned up. Now, repeat. It came up. It turned up. Very good. Now, let's continue. Sometimes you need to get back to something, which means to return to a task. For example, I will get back to work. Another one is come back to, which is similar. For example, I came back to finish my task. Now, listen. I took a break and then got back to work. Now, repeat. I got back to it. I came back to it. Excellent. Now, let's move into ending your day. One useful phrasal verb is wind down, which you learned earlier. Another one is settle down, which means to relax or become calm. For example, I settled down in the evening. Now, connect them. I wound down after work and settled down for the night. Now, repeat. I wound down. I settled down. Very natural. Now, let's build a longer daily routine story. Using these phrasal verbs, I woke up early and got up quickly. I started off my day with a short walk. Then I set off for work during the day. I had a lot to do, and my tasks took up most of my time. I even ran out of time and had to put off some plans. Later, something unexpected came up, and I had to deal with it. I tried to fit in a short break and squeezed in some relaxation. After finishing my work, I got back to a few tasks I had missed in the evening. I came back home, wound down, and settled down to relax. Now, pause and imagine your own routine. Now, let's practice together again. I got up to, something went on. I started off. I set off. I ran out of time. It took up my time. I put it off. It was called off. I went through. I carried on. I fit it in. I squeezed it in. Something came up. Something turned up. I got back to, I wound down. I settled down. Repeat slowly. Feel the rhythm. Now, let's add a few more useful phrasal verbs related to time and routine. Hold on, which means to wait. For example, hold on a moment. And hang on, which is similar. For example, hang on, I'll be right back. Now, connect them. Hold on, I need a second. Hang on, I'll finish this. Now, repeat. Hold on, hang on. Excellent. Another one is come along, which means to progress. For example, My English is coming along well. And keep up with, which you already know. Now, listen. My skills are coming along, and I'm trying to keep up with my practice. Now, repeat. It is coming along. I keep up with it. Very good. Now, take a deep breath. You're doing really well. You're now able to talk about your daily routine, your time, and your schedule, using natural English. Now, imagine your own day again, and say it in your mind. Today, I woke up, I started off, I set off, I ran out of time, I got back to, I wound down. This is how fluency becomes automatic. Keep going. Now, we will continue with the final set of phrasal verbs and a complete review, so you can confidently use everything you have learned in real conversations. Let's continue. You have reached an advanced stage now, and you're very close to mastering a wide range of essential phrasal verbs. Now, we will expand your usage even further, and then begin to bring everything together, so you can use these expressions naturally, smoothly, and confidently in real-life conversations. Let's begin with a very useful phrasal verb, bring about, which means to cause something to happen. For example, learning English every day can bring about positive, change in your life. Now, let's add another one, come about, which means something happens. For example, how did this situation come about? Now, connect them. Hard work can bring about success and positive results. Come about over time. Now, repeat slowly. It brought about change. It came about naturally. Good. Keep going. Now, let's continue. Sometimes you need to come up against something, which means to face a difficulty. For example, I came up against a big challenge. Another one is get around, which means to find a way to solve or avoid a problem. For example, I found a way to get around the issue. Now, listen. I came up against a problem, but I got around it. Now, repeat. I came up against it. I got around it. Excellent. Now, let's move into thinking and decision-making. One important phrasal verb is weigh up, which means to consider options carefully. For example, I weighed up my choices. Another one is go for, which means to choose. For example, I decided to go for the best option. Now, connect them. I weighed up my options and went for the right decision. Now, repeat. I weighed it up. I went for it. Very good. Now, let's continue. Sometimes you need to rule out something, which means to eliminate an option. For example, I ruled out that idea. Another one is narrow down, which means to reduce options. For example, I narrowed down my choices. Now, listen. I ruled out the bad options and narrowed down my choices. Now, repeat. I ruled it out. I narrowed it down. Excellent. Now, let's move into communication and explanation. Sometimes you need to spell out something, which means to explain clearly. For example, let me spell it out for you. Another one is lay out, which means to explain something step by step. For example, she laid out the plan clearly. Now, connect them. He spelled it out and laid out the plan in detail. Now, repeat. He spelled it out. She laid it out. Very natural. Now, let's continue. Sometimes you need to sum up, which means to give a short summary. For example, let me sum up the idea. Another one is wrap up, which you already know. Now, Listen, let me sum up everything and wrap up this discussion. Now, repeat. I summed it up. I wrapped it up. Excellent. Now, so let's move into reactions and outcomes. Sometimes things turn out, which you know. Another one is end up, which you also know. Now, connect them. Things turned out well, even though I ended up taking a different path. Now, repeat. It turned out well. I ended up doing something else. Very good. Now, let's continue. Sometimes you need to follow through, which means to complete something you started. For example, I followed through on my plan. Another one is carry out, which you already learned. Now, listen. I followed through and carried out my plan successfully. Now, repeat. I followed through. I carried it out. Excellent. Now, let's move into confidence and expression. Sometimes you need to stand up for, which means to defend your ideas. For example, I stood up for my opinion. Another one is speak up, which you learned earlier. Now, connect them. I spoke up and stood up for what I believe in. Now, repeat. I spoke up. I stood up for it. Very strong expression. Now, let's build a longer real-life story using these advanced phrasal verbs. I wanted to make an important decision, so I weighed up my options carefully. I ruled out some ideas and narrowed down my choices. I came up against a few challenges, but I found a way to get around them. I decided to go for the best option and followed through on my plan along the way. I had to explain my ideas clearly, so I spelled them out and laid out my strategy. In the end, everything turned out well, and my efforts brought about positive results. Now, pause and imagine your own situation. Now, let's practice together again. I weighed it up. I went for it. I ruled it out. I narrowed it down. I came up against. I got around it. I followed through. I carried it out. I spelled it out. I laid it out. I summed it up. I wrapped it up. It turned out well. I ended up. I stood up for. I spoke up. Repeat slowly. Feel the confidence. Now, let's begin to bring everything together. You have learned a very large number of phrasal verbs across different areas of life. Morning routines, work, relationships, emotions, problems, lifestyle, and time. Now, the key is to connect them naturally in your own speech. Imagine your full day again and describe it in your mind, using as many phrasal verbs as you can. I woke up, got up, and started off my day. I went through the routine and headed out. I ran into a few problems, but I dealt with them and worked things out. I met up with people, talked things over, and got along well. I kept up with my tasks and followed through on my plans, even when things came up. I didn't give up. In the end, everything turned out well. Now, repeat that slowly. This is your fluency in action. Take a deep breath. You have done something powerful. You are now able to understand and use a wide range of essential phrasal verbs in real English conversations. Now, we will do a complete natural flow practice, bringing everything together in longer speaking patterns so you can feel confident using these phrasal verbs in your daily life without thinking too much. Let's continue. Now, this is the moment where everything comes together. You have learned a wide range of phrasal verbs across different areas of daily life. And now, we are going to use them in longer, natural speaking flows. So your brain starts connecting everything automatically. This is where your English begins to feel smooth, confident, and real. Imagine your full day, from the beginning, and just follow the flow of English naturally. I woke up early this morning. I got up slowly and turned off my alarm. I washed up, put on my clothes, and made up my bed. Then I sat down for a quick breakfast, but I realized I had run out of milk, so I stepped out, stopped by a nearby store, and picked up what I needed. After that, I came back, cleaned up, and headed out for work. On my way, I got on the bus and got off near my office. I showed up a little early, so I went over my notes and worked on a few small tasks. Soon, I ran into a problem, but I didn't panic. I broke it down, looked into the details, and worked it out step by step. Even though something unexpected came up, I dealt with it and carried on with my work. Later in the day, I met up with a colleague, and we talked things over. We brought up a few ideas, weighed them up carefully, and decided to go for the best option. We teamed up, helped each other out, and followed through on our plan. Even when he fell behind for a moment, we caught up quickly and kept everything on track. During a break, I stepped out for a while and ran into an old friend. We hung out for a few minutes, caught up on life, and talked about what we had been doing recently. Even though we didn't agree on everything, we still got along well and enjoyed the conversation. In the afternoon, I had more work to finish. I kept on going, stuck to my plan, and got through all my tasks. I finished off everything I needed to do and handed in my work on time. In the end, everything turned out better than I expected. After work, I headed out again and stopped by a cafe. I ordered something simple and sat down to relax. I looked around, checked out the place, and just took it easy for a while. Later, I came back home, heated up some food, and wound down after a long day. In the evening, I decided to work on myself. I looked back at my day, learned from a few small mistakes, and thought about how to improve. I planned ahead for tomorrow, set up a simple routine, and promised myself to stick to it. I want to keep up this progress and move forward step by step. Now, let's slow down and practice together again, but this time, feel the full flow of your day. I woke up, I got up, I stepped out, I picked up, I headed out, I got on, I got off, I showed up, I worked on, I ran into, I dealt with, I worked it out, I carried on, I met up, I talked things over, I went for it, I teamed up, I caught up, I hung out, I got along, I kept on, I stuck to, I got through, I finished off, I handed in, it turned out well, I stopped by, I checked out, I took it easy, I came back, I wound down, I worked on myself, I looked back, I learned from, I planned ahead, I set up, I stuck to it, I moved forward. Now, take a moment, breathe, and imagine saying all of this in a real conversation. This is how natural English sounds. This is how fluent speakers think, not word by word, but in connected ideas and actions. Now, let's go one step deeper. Imagine a slightly different day and follow the flow again. I woke up feeling a bit tired, but I didn't give up. I got up, washed up, and started off my day slowly. I went through my routine and tried to fit in some exercise, even though I ran out of time. I didn't let it set me back. I headed out and got on a bus. Something unexpected came up, but I figured it out and got through the situation. At work, I came up against a challenge. I thought it over, came up with a solution, and carried it out. I brought up my ideas in a meeting, spoke up clearly, and stood up for my opinion. In the end, everything worked out, and I felt more confident. Later, I met up with a friend. We hung out, talked about life, and cleared up a few misunderstandings. We made up, laughed, and decided to keep in touch. Moments like these shall help you grow and move on. At night, I slowed down, took it easy, and let my mind relax. I looked back at everything that happened, learned from it, and felt proud that I kept on going. Now, repeat this idea in your own way. Don't worry about perfection. Just focus on the flow. Today, I woke up, I started off, I figured it out. I got through, I met up, I talked about, I learned from, I moved forward. This is your English now. Natural, flexible, and expressive. You have built something strong. You have practiced hundreds of essential phrasal verbs in real-life situations. And more importantly, you have trained your mind to think in English through daily actions, emotions, and conversations. Now, you just keep practicing like this. Keep repeating, keep imagining, and keep using these expressions in your own life, because fluency is not about knowing more words. It is about using what you already know again and again until it becomes part of you. Thank you so much for staying with me throughout this lesson. I truly appreciate your time, your focus, and your effort. Today, you didn't just learn phrasal verbs, you practiced how to use them in real life, in your daily routine, your conversations, your work, and your personal growth. And that is what really builds fluency. If you keep listening, repeating, and using these expressions again and again, you will start to notice a big change in the way you understand and speak English. Slowly, your sentences will become more natural, your confidence will grow, and you will feel more comfortable expressing yourself in any situation. Try to come back to this lesson whenever you can. Repeat it, speak along with it, and most importantly, try to use these phrasal verbs in your daily life, even in small sentences. Because small practice every day creates powerful results over time. If you found this lesson helpful, make sure to support the channel and stay connected for more daily English practice like this. We are here to help you improve step by step. Keep practicing, keep believing in yourself, and I'll see you in the next lesson.